Hi everybody. Lesson 2-7 is the last lesson in Unit 2. And what better way to end a unit where we're talking about light and sound than how the eyes and the ears work. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so to start off, we're going to talk about the ear, right? That's a little easier to understand. The ear can pick up frequencies between 20 hertz and 20 kilohertz. So that's between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. There are three main parts of the ear. You have the outer ear, all right? That's everything that your Q-tip could hit, right? It's made of obviously the outer ear part here. And then this space in here called the ear canal. That's where, so this guy here, this is where the sound waves are collected. And then they're funneled into here where they're amplified. And then you get into here called the middle ear, made up of the tympanic membrane, also known as the eardrum, and the auditory bones. All right, quick flashback to biology. Anybody remember the requirement to being a mammal that had to do with the ears? No one? All right, fine. One of the 6 characteristics of all mammals is that they have 3 bones in their inner ear: the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup. And that's what you see right here. All right, so the bones are connected loosely on this side to the tympanic membrane, and then over here they are connected to this structure known as the cochlea. Right, it looks like a little snail shell. This structure is filled with fluid up to about here, and this is known as the inner ear. All right, and then this is the auditory nerve. This nerve here is what brings you into the brain. If you're wondering what this is down here, that's the eustachian tube. That is a drainage tube. When people have problems with their sinuses and their ears appear blocked, that's because you have fluid pressure or inflammation over there in the eustachian tube. It doesn't really have to do with hearing them. All right, so how does sound work? Or how does hearing work, rather? All right, so you're going to come all the way over here. So sound is going to come in through here. And remember, sound is a mechanical wave. It is actually air pushing towards you. So that air is going to hit this tympanic drum, tympanic membrane eardrum. That's going to cause these bones that are lightly connected here and here to vibrate, to move. When that happens, you see them connected over here, they're going to cause this area here that's filled with fluid to resonate, just like the water bowl we did. You're going to see ripples in the water. And then down in here in the cochlea, that's where all the very fine hairs are. And they're going to move as well. Every time something moves, each one of those little hairs are connected to one of the neurons that make up this bundle called the auditory nerve, and it goes to your brain, and your brain registers sound. It heard something that way. A little note too about these guys here, the semicircular canals. You notice that there's 3 of them, and they're all oriented in a slightly different way. They're not all filled with fluid. They're halfway filled with fluid. The semicircular canals are part of your ear, but they actually don't really have anything to do with hearing. They have to do with orientation. This is how you know you're standing upright. When you're lying down, you actually know you're lying down. When you're standing on your head, you actually know you're standing on your head. When you're spinning around, you know that. And it's because the fluid moves to different places in these canals, and your brain registers that. Sometimes when you get a really, really, really bad ear infection or a really, really, really bad sinus infection, you feel dizzy. And that's why. People who experience dizziness a lot, that's known as vertigo, oftentimes have a problem in their inner ear or an inner ear infection because that fluid isn't moving the way it's supposed to and your brain is getting confused. All right, so these are all the parts of the ear that I just talked about and what they do. The hammer, the stirrup, and the anvil, these are bones vibrated by the eardrum. The ear canal will carry the sound towards the eardrum. Semicircular canals are balance and orientation. Tympanic membrane are the part that pick up the vibrations. The cochlea is the part of the ear that contains the small hairs, which in turn vibrate into an electrical signal. The eustachian tube connects the ear to the mouth, also known as a sinus cavity. And the outer ear channels the sound towards the eardrum. Now, probably right about this time, if we were doing this in class, one of you would raise your hand and say, Dr. Agerson, do we need to know this for the test? All right, so let's go ahead and talk about that right now. I'm going to see who actually watched this video and who didn't. The part of 2-7 that you are going to be tested on will only be the part that's in your homework. Now, if you look at the homework questions for 2-7, you have 2 drawings that you need to label and a couple questions to answer. Only the material covered in the homework will be part of the test. Let's see who the first person is who asked me this question next class. All right, so hearing problems. All right, hearing range can be damaged by several things. We talked about this a little bit when we started sound. All right, believe it or not, too much earwax. Earwax is a major concern. Earwax buildup will block off that canal. If the air can't get in there, then neither will the sound. Damage to the auditory nerve itself, all right, because remember each neuron is connected to a hair. So if you damage the hair, you will damage the auditory nerve. Loud music will do this, and we already talked about that. Illness or infection. Bacterial infections can actually do damage to your nerves. When we talked about Helen Keller, why she was deaf, part of that was because of the fever that she sustained as a child. And just old age. I mean, you know, the body breaks down as you get older, and things just don't work as well. All right, so that's all the ear. The ear is actually a pretty easy thing to understand. Now let's talk about the eye. The eye can detect electromagnetic waves from 400 nanometers to 700 nanometers. Do you need to know that? No. It's just the idea that, you know, do you need to know that? No, you don't need to know the specifics. You just need to kind of know the idea. So the eye is only going to pick up electromagnetic waves within the visible light part of the spectrum. The eye is much more complicated. A lot more moving parts here. First of all, the eye itself is hollow. It is hollow and it is filled with a very thick gelatinous goo known as the vitreous gel. All right. Some people, the old term used for it as vitreous humor. Humor meaning liquid. All right. So starting at the front, you have this covering, this thin, transparent covering called the cornea. It is the cornea that is messed with during laser surgery. Between the cornea and this area right here, there is actually fluid, a separate chamber of fluid that is known as the aqueous humor. Then you have a layer of of circular muscle that we refer to as the iris, and the space between it is called the pupil. The pupil is not actually a part of your eye, it's a hole. Right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. We see things because light hits the back of our eye right here. Kind of like a movie theater. You know, it projects it on a screen in the back. If light couldn't get into your eye, you wouldn't be able to see. There'd have to be some kind of a hole in your eye for light to get into your eye. The pupil is the hole. So when you see somebody's pupil, you are actually looking into the eye. That is why they shine that bright light at you when you're at the doctor's office, because they're actually looking at the back of your eye. It's pretty cool. Do not try that yourself. Right behind the pupil, a couple millimeters, is this thick, kind of like a peach beigeish color. It sort of looks like a jelly bean after you've sort of sucked all the candy coating off of it. It's called that's your lens. The purpose of the lens in your eye is to refract light. All right. Now, take just a second here and look at how the pupil is shaped. Kind of looks like an oval, right? Now, have we seen something in class that looks like an oval? Should have. If I were to draw on this thing, it should look like this guy here. 2 triangles on top of each other. So when light comes in, remember light always bends to the base of a prism. It's going to come down this way, and light is going to come up this way, and hopefully, if everything is right and I drew it correctly, it's all going to hit a spot. All right? Actually, it's going to hit the spot. I didn't draw it right. But it's going to hit a spot on the back of your eye. It's going to bend the light in and hit a spot on the back of your eye. That is the point of the lens. Now, the lens is held on by a little muscle here and here. Your lens stretches and contracts to see different things. That's why you squint. When you're squinting, it's just a reflex. You're actually trying to move that muscle. And that's what eye strain is. And like I said, this guy is floating in this thick gel of vitreous humor. Why is there eye goo back here? Well, remember, light will bend or refract in a different medium. So this actually helps that light bend. So both of these things are working to refract light to the back. The focal point, where the light actually does bend, is right here. It's called the fovea. The fovea is your focus point. And the kind of the space around it is known as the macula. This is where you see. Right? The rest of this area here, right, is to help with light and shadows. But this is where the picture is. This is where you actually see from. Right? That information is transferred by these nerves, or these cells rather, over to this optic nerve and into your brain. This area right here, notice, doesn't have any of those spots. This is your blind spot. Everybody has one. Some people it's a little bigger than others, but everybody's got a blind spot right there. All right, so how light travels into the eye, it first starts with the veil of tears. That's just the, the water on site, when you cry. It's just the moisture on the outside of your eye. Coats it, keeps the cornea from getting scratched. The cornea is the clear covering that helps you focus light. It also protects the pupil, obviously. Then you have aqueous humor. That's that liquid between them. Keeps the pressure up on the lens so it doesn't go anywhere. The pupil is a central circular opening in the eye, and then and around it is the colored part of the eye known as the iris. The iris is a muscle, and it will react to the amount of light. So if there's a lot of light coming in, the iris will contract and make the opening smaller because it doesn't need to be big. When there's not a lot of light, the iris will dilate and open up the pupil so that more light gets in. The lens focuses light like a camera lens, and it will change shape to focus light from near or distant objects. The vitreous humor is that thick jelly in the center of the eye, again, a refraction medium. And then you have the optic nerve that actually sends the signal from photoreceptors to the brain's visual center, which is in the back of the brain. Anybody remember what it is? What it's called? If you said occipital lobe, you are correct. All right, now the back of the eye is actually known as the retina. The retina goes all the way around the back of the eye, from where the lens starts all the way around to where the lens ends. And it acts a lot like camera film. It's shiny, it's iridescent, like when you actually see it. And the nerves themselves there, the cells that are there, are photosensitive. They will actually react when light hits them. Now there's two different types of photoreceptors in the back of your eye, and down here now, right? There are rod cells and cone cells. Rod cells look just the way they sound. They're like little cylinders with a little nerve behind them, all right? These guys detect light. Cone cells look like that, right? They have a little bit more of a point to them. And these guys detect color, and they're next to each other. And then these nerves all collect together. If there's a bunch of them in a row, they all connect together into a big bundle known as the optic nerve. The macula is the place in the retina that has more photoreceptors than any other place. And then surrounding all of this, you have blood vessels, little red blood vessels. You've seen those little red lines in your eyes that are bringing oxygen to keep everything going here. When you're sick, or if you're having allergies, those blood cells will dilate, or the blood vessels will dilate so that more oxygen can come in and help you produce an immune response, and that's why your eyes appear red. All right. That dark iridescent color on the eyes is known as a retinal epithelial pigment. It's important that these cells are surrounded by a black background because that absorbs excess light so you can see clearly. I will not test you on these next two, but just in case you were wondering, the choroid is the layer of blood vessels that sits just behind your photoreceptors, and the sclera is what you actually call the white of your eye. The white of your eye is the sclera. It's just a tough material made of fiber almost. It neither transmits nor receives light. Remember, it's white, so it reflects light back. It's mainly just a support structure. It's kind of like the white of your eye is kind of like the bone skull for your eye. It's protecting all of the nasty, all of the really sensitive stuff underneath from all the nasties on the outside. All right. What number do you see here? Okay, some of you said 29, and some of you said what number? Right? What you're looking at is called an Ishihara test. All of you went through this when you were little. If you didn't know your numbers, then it was a shape, like a house or a boat or a duck or something. All right? If you have a problem with your cone cells, if you have been born with a genetic variation that makes your cone cells defective, then you will not be able to see the number in this picture. In fact, I printed your papers in black and white. All right? Look at your paper. You can't see the number. Maybe a little bit, but that's it. It's when you are colorblind, all of the circles look the same. And notice that the outside is green and the number is red. Red-green colorblind is incredibly common in men because it's found on the chromosome that only men have. Or I shouldn't take it back. It's found on the chromosome that men only have one of. And both red and green are found on the same cone cell. So that particular cone cell is defective, and this is known as red-green color blindness. All right, that is the end of Unit 2. We are halfway there. So study for your test. Remember, only the things that are on the homework questions are fair game for the test. You should be able to label an eye. You don't necessarily have to tell me what all it does, but you should be able to label an eye. You should be able to label an ear, and you should be able to answer the questions. And I will see you in class.